Our Democrat of the day is currently representing 44B, but she's looking to be the representative of the new 45B, if I got my numbers and letters correct on that one. Representative Patty Acomb is kind enough to join us. She has been over in St. Paul. She is the vice chair of the Climate, Energy, Finance, and Policy Committee, the Environment and Natural Resources Finance Policy. She's also on that committee as well. We'll talk to her about the last session as well as her reelection campaign. Representative, I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Well, good afternoon, Matt. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's great to be with you today.
It's great to be with you. Great to have you back on the air with us here. I'm right about that. You're 44B now. You're going to be 45B, right?
You're absolutely right. A little confusing, this the whole, redistricting in our new maps. But yes, so I am currently representing 44B and am running to represent 45B. And a little bit different map. I will be serving a little bit more of the Lake Minnetonka area along with the city of Minnetonka.
What did you lose? Can I ask that?
Yeah, so I currently also represent part of Plymouth, and so I will no longer be representing the city of Plymouth, though they will always be in my heart, and they can certainly always count on me as a friend at the Capitol.
It's an interesting district in this sense, is that it was not that long ago. That was a strong Democratic district. It has been slowly gaining more and more DFL blue. It is now, we don't take anything for granted. It is a fairly reliable blue district. It's basically the northern part of Lake Minnetonka, or Minnetonka, the city of Minnetonka, from St. Louis Park all the way over towards, you got Grays Bay, you got Wayzata Bay. It looked like a good chunk of that in there as well. So, yeah, some of that, the eastern part of Lake Minnetonka, but a lot of Minnetonka itself in there.
Yeah, exactly. And, before going to the legislature, I was on the Minnetonka City Council for 7 years. And so this is a community not only that I was born and raised in, but I have represented for a long time. So I'm looking forward to getting to know the new parts of the district this summer on the campaign trail. And so getting to, head out to Wayzata and Deep Haven and Shorewood it'll be great to get to know some new people in the community.
Representative, we'll go fishing. I'll take you out there. We'll go around the eastern side of the lake. We'll take you fishing out there. I'll point out the final points. Okay, we'll do that. You are, of course, one of our point people for the DFL when it comes to climate and environment issues. We'll start with the question of how have you felt the last session went in regards to climate and environmental issues?
Well, it's a mixed bag. There's so much that got left undone at the Capitol, and so I'm hopeful that is not all for naught. We worked hard this session on so many different things, climate and energy, and in the environment, certainly one of them. But there were a few things that we did get passed this year already, and that was that also are kind of in that same environment wheelhouse. We passed the LCCMR bill, which is the Legislative Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resources. And I have been appointed to that committee, and we passed that bill through the House and Senate, and that will be passed into law, and it will invest $70 million into natural resource-based projects all across our state. And another bill that we passed is the Legacy Amendment bill, and again, investing in environment and cultural and arts resources within our state as well. And I'm so proud that we have a state that prioritizes the environment and has, put lottery money towards the environment and sales tax money toward the environment and the arts. And so it's great that we're able to have gotten those passed in really a bipartisan way. So that does show that we can do it. But we did leave so much left undone and unfinished, even though we have some great agreements that are the foundation that I'm hopeful will come back to very quickly in a special session.
You bring up the legacy stuff, and it's funny because it has changed. I mean, the Republicans were trying to get that money deterred away and, get away from the environment and the arts and put it into other things for years. And, it's just the people of Minnesota wanted that money spent on the environment and the arts. And they've tried to change it. They really couldn't go anywhere. It's nice to see that the Republicans are finally on board with what the public wants, and they're actually, being part of the solution as part of the problem there.
Absolutely right. And I mean, the environment is probably one of the issues that it's certainly one of my top issues. But when I talk to people within the community and across the state, the environment is so much a part of our state. And so the fact that we have dedicated money, we have put it to referendum and asked the voters, and they have agreed this is important and we need to value and prioritize it. And so the fact that we are doing that, and again, in a bipartisan way, getting it passed. That's great for Minnesotans and great for our environment.
You talk about some things that were left on the table that there's agreement on. Let's start there. What are some of the things that you do have some Republican support for that unfortunately did not get done?
Well, there's several. And so, as you mentioned in your opening, I am chair of the House Climate and Energy Committee. And in that committee, we have a pretty darn good working relationship with our Senate counterpart, Senator Senjum. So it's the committee in the House is chaired by Chair Long. And we have, over the last two sessions, been able to come to some really great compromise and achieve some really good things for Minnesotans. And this year, the things that have been agreed upon are continued investments in a bill of mine that's solar on schools. And so the hope is we will be able to put another $16 million toward putting solar on school rooftops. Another big chunk of money, about $17 million, toward weatherization, and that's making sure that people's homes are energy efficient, so we aren't wasting energy, and it's actually saving homeowners money in a time right now when we know how high energy costs are hitting Minnesotans. And so those two programs, as well as money that we'll be getting from the federal government through the infrastructure, the bipartisan infrastructure bill. And so there's so much of it that will need state matching funds. And so we have agreed to set aside about $20 million, if I recall, to be the matching funds for the federal grants. We don't want to leave any federal money on the table that we can use to put toward infrastructure within our state.
You know, what's also interesting is just, going back to the sausage making of it all. I have heard from, and this is not universal. This is not universal, but I have heard from multiple Democratic chairs in the House that there had a lot of success on certain issues, working with the Senate counterparts. But yet, it was kind of one of those things where there seemed to be very much a unified front in the House on the Republican side against a lot of issues. It is interesting to see that the Senate does seem to have a very different vibe, and it's not universal. I'm not saying there's a lot of things that we disagree on, but they did come. There did seem to be some semblance of understanding of we have to work together with the DFL House to get bills passed that came out of the Senate versus the minority Republicans in the House.
Well, Matt, I think you're absolutely right. And as this, whole session was coming to a close, leadership, Speaker Hortman and Majority Leader Miller and Governor Walz came together and put together this framework that was setting targets for us as committees to work on. And we have this surplus and this opportunity. And so they came up with this framework to put $4 billion in tax relief, put $4 billion in investments in our state, and then keeping a bunch on the bottom line because of the threat of a possible recession. And so I thought it was a really practical and pragmatic way to look at this opportunity that we have. And while we had this agreement, and we've had some great working relationships within committees and around conference committees, unfortunately, the larger Senate culture was not willing to allow these things to come to a close. And so like the Health and Human Service bill, they were close, but they couldn't make it. The education bill, we know how much our schools are struggling, especially around mental health. And then around, there was great interest in putting money towards the special education gap that we, mandate our services to provide, but we don't necessarily fund them. And so looking to fill those gaps. And so while there was this broad agreement, when we were getting down to the details, unfortunately, we couldn't quite get there, but I do think we're close, and I'm hopeful that we can get back. And now that, the ballot is set for the fall and the filing has closed, I think it's time that we can get back to the Capitol and close these bills up.
Yeah, but some of them, it was clear, like the education bill, the Senate Republicans were not even, they didn't even put a bill out, really. I mean, let's be honest about it. So there were some things they weren't being very honest about. Let's talk about disagreements, because this is, when it comes down to the climate and environmental issues, that this is what we're looking at. We got a decision coming up here in November. And there are things right now that if the Republicans get control again, they are going to basically jam through with aggressive tactics to all Minnesotans. Let's talk about some of the concerns that you have from the House, that if the Republicans do win, what they'll try to push on the people of Minnesota.
Well, that's a good question, Matt. And I think we know there are some really big issues that are facing our environment, like aquatic invasive species or the land of 10,000 lakes. And unfortunately, our lakes are struggling. We have chronic wasting disease, and we know that the tradition in our state of hunting is so important. And yet our deer population is being threatened. And so, I would say the DFL House, we have some real choices and real options to solve these things and to work towards fixing them. And unfortunately, the Republicans don't want to do that. And, we have, for example, there are deer farms, and it has been shown in many cases that chronic wasting disease is just transferring amongst the deer. We want to stop, bringing deer across our state, which is only spreading the disease, and it's now in the wild within our deer hunting communities. And so, I think that sadly, the Republicans will not work with us to try and address this really big and important issue. Instead, they're wanting to take environmental money and really work on wastewater treatment, which is important. But I'm not certain that there aren't environmental issues we should be spending and targeting environmental dollars on.
Well, and you talk about chronic wasting disease. You're jeopardizing, in Ohio, I believe it is, they had to shut down the hunting season because the chronic wasting disease is so bad over there. You are jeopardizing one of the largest economic engines for Minnesota, in rural Minnesota, particularly in October, November. You cannot jeopardize hunting seasons with this inaction, and they put a handful of deer farms ahead of all the hunters in Minnesota.
Yeah. And I mean, we'd like to just stop allowing new ones, put a moratorium on allowing new ones, and they won't even let us do that. And so I don't understand the disconnect, and clearly Minnesotans want to protect this really important resource and tradition.
I want to bring up another issue here, and I know that this is stuff that Governor Walz and the federal government have been dealing with, this Line 3 stuff. I mean, if we can step back for a second, I mean, clearly this company that built these people, they screwed it up so bad. The aquifers were punctured. They did damage. They leaked toxic chemicals, and this was damage that was done before oil started going through the dang thing. We have to have better oversight of this, because right now it just seems like all we're doing is we know that they're not going to really necessarily be environmentally friendly when they build it, and we give them a slap on the hand at the end of it. I mean, the reality is they've damaged Minnesota's environment, especially for the Native American tribes.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Line 3 is, certainly an issue that I've heard so much about from people in my community and across the state. And what bothers me is that they didn't even, when approving the permits for this line, they didn't even take climate change into account. So here we are looking at the impacts of the oil that'll be piped through this line and the climate change impacts that we'll have. Since then, we are working to include climate impacts within the environmental assessment worksheet, which is a step forward, but to not even have been able to include that in the conversation when that was approved and allowed to happen, not to mention all that you said about the impacts on our groundwater. And it feels like, do we even really know all of it? It seems like new things continue to surface all the time.
You and I are in complete agreement. I don't think we know all of it. And I think, but we do, one thing we do know is that we clearly should put the brakes on any of these other major projects, whether that's a sulfur mine by the Boundary Waters or other pipelines, until we actually understand what exactly was done, how it was done, and whether or not even projects like this could be done environmentally safe, because right now I've got some serious doubts they ever could be.
Right. And when we, I'm starting to hear about the whole notion of a carbon pipeline to North Dakota and, liquefying carbon emissions, capturing it from places like ethanol plants and piping it to North Dakota. To me, that is makes zero sense. And so I'm hopeful that we can look at our permitting system at the way that we're reviewing projects like this and preventing these things from continuing to happen.
Representative, I can't tell you how much I love talking environmental issues. We haven't talked about them enough here on this show, but I do want to give you a platform here. You're running for 45B. What is one of the issues, your local district, what do you want to bring to 45B if you're reelected to go back to St. Paul?
Well, there's a lot of things, and I think that the election this fall is what I think of as probably one of the most important of our lifetime. I think there are so many things on the ballot, and when I look at some of the bills that were introduced in Minnesota this year, our democracy is on the ballot. Our, reproductive freedom, climate change, gun violence prevention, public education. So many of the things that we look at and we value living in Minnesota are at risk. And so as I meet with my community members and people in our district, the things that I hear that are important to them are preserving our good schools, our public education, preserving and protecting our environment, and really leaving a community for the future. And so addressing climate change and making sure that everyone has access to good quality health care, and we remove the barriers. So there's a lot of issues, but I do think that this is a really important election, and I think it's one that we all need to be paying attention to and looking at what people, not only what they're saying, but what they're doing. We see so many times that Minnesotans all across the state value things, and yet they're not being voted on like the people in their district want them to be. The environment is a prime example, along with climate change and gun violence prevention. There are some just common sense things that we can do to keep communities and schools, for goodness sake, safe. And yet legislators aren't voting that way. And so we need to start holding people accountable to their communities and to the values of our state.
And you just said it perfectly. It really did. It's just, here you have these large national issues, but every one of these impacts us in your local community, whether that's climate change or, trying to prevent gun violence. That's what the DFL is trying to do. We're trying to fight climate change. That's what the DFL is trying to do. Women's bodies, not controlling women's bodies. The DFL is for individual choice on that matter. And Republicans start banning contraception. I guarantee you that's a local issue in every district in this state. So you got to know exactly what you're voting for when it comes to this November election.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And even as much as our elections, honestly, I mean, we are a part of the 3rd Congressional District, which I think is the highest voting turnout in the country. Mm-hmm. And so here we have incredible elections that are held with high integrity, and yet our democracy is at threat. I don't think there was a Republican gubernatorial candidate who would admit that our election was fair and honest. And so given that, we need to be afraid about our elections going forward if our state becomes Republican.
And I'm saying this, not you. Have you seen the Secretary of State candidate for the Republican Party? Okay, that's me. That's me saying it. That's me saying it. But oh my! All right. I want to get people to your website here, because obviously, if you want to volunteer, donate, find out more about Patty, what's the website they should go to?
PattyAcomb.com, and there's a place to sign up to help and support us. We would love your help. Please join us. PattyAcomb.com. Patty Acomb. I'll link to everything a little bit later on. Representative, outstanding work in St. Paul. We need to get you back over there. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time. Matt, thank you so much, and thanks for all you do. You have a great afternoon.
Thank you. It's Patty Acomb, representative from 44B, soon to be 45B. We'll take a break. Come on back. Minnesota coronavirus update when we do return. It is the Matt McNeil Show right here on AM 950.